call the meeting to order and a very untimely 6:02.
Want me to do roll
Could
call?
we have a roll call,
Okay.
please?
Miss Catherine Patno,
Yes, here.
Mr. David Florio,
Dave Florio, yeah.
Mr. Luke Murray. Here. Mr. Don Cowart.
Present.
Mr. Harold Sands.
Here.
And I'm present.
Okay. And could we have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion to go into executive session.
Second the motion?
I got 6:03. And could we have a roll call, please?
Miss Catherine Patno,
Yes.
Mr. Dave Florio,
Yes.
Mr. Luke Murray.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the open session of the Coventry School Committee at 6:38. And if we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you could remain standing for a moment of silence as we consider the work before us this evening. You may be seated. Mr. Levis, if you could notify the public of the emergency exits, please.
Sure. In the case of emergency, to the rear of the room, there are two exits to your left and right. Just please go out those doors and the parking lot to your left.
Thank you. And Mr. Florio, if you could honor us by reading the mission statement for Coventry Public Schools, please.
Yes, I will, Madam Chair. Thank you. The mission of the Coventry Public Schools is to inspire, support, and challenge all students in an inclusive community to be critical thinkers, effective communicators, reflective learners, responsible individuals, and global citizens.
Thank you.
Welcome, Madam Chair.
And so for the public's knowledge, the school committee met in executive session for about a half hour before this meeting. Two matters were considered that we voted on: our homeschooling requests and our executive session minutes from 10/28/21. Both those votes were unanimous and carried 3-0. We also talked about negotiations with the Coventry Teacher Alliance and the SRP. That being said, is there a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the records of the executive session be kept closed pursuant to sections 42-46-4 and 42-46-5.
Second the motion.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 3-0. Moving on to agenda item number 5. Approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of our open session on 10/28/21?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the open session on 10/28/21 as presented / amended.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 3-0. And then we're going to move into the public agenda for the citizens gathered. The school committee will consider comments from the citizens gathered on the remaining agenda items. If we are going to vote on something before I call for the vote, members of the citizens gathered may speak to the motion and say their thoughts or have questions before we actually vote on it. So next thing, a highlight of my day, celebration of the Ela and Shawn Feinstein Middle School girls soccer team. Mr. Levis, turn it over to you.
That applause was for me, but anyway, Emily, do you want to come on up? So, we want to just, first of all, thank you guys, and I want to thank the parents. I know I was a soccer dad. In fact, last Saturday, I went to New Jersey, my son played for that game, and I drove down and got to watch him play. So, I applaud, I appreciate it. I know for me, it's a highlight, work or whatever we do, it's a highlight to see our kids be competitive, to work with others, to be successful, right? You guys are amazing. You guys were Central Division champs, so let's give a big hand.
Woo!
The assistant superintendent, Mr. Carroll was a soccer star,
Woo.
believe it or not. Yeah. Warren, was it Mount Hope?
State champ,
No,
Warren High School. state
Wow.
Champions,
That was a
1985.
long time.
Woo-hoo.
I thought you were gonna say Nintendo.
No. So, Coach, I want to give you a certificate. Thank you. And, so we're gonna call you up one at a time. We'll give you a certificate if you don't mind standing here. I know you can line up and then afterwards I'll have you fix this way, but afterwards I'll have you turn around and the school committee will probably want to say a few things to you and then we'll open it up to the public, okay? And if parents want to take pictures and things like that, not that anybody would, but just in
No.
case, feel free. So Mackenzie Owens, not here, okay. Kendra Aziz, did I say that right?
Woohoo.
No, you want to just, do you mind staying up here? 'Cause-
Yeah, just go down the end.
Kendra,
All right.
okay.
Why don't you go that way?
That's
Yeah.
right. Kaylin. Not here, okay. Mia Bucacci. Love those sweatshirts too. huh?
Yeah, they're cool.
Grayson Capuano. Not here. Edison DeMarza. Not here. Alice DeSaya. Did I say it right? Haley Duggan, did I say it right? Leah Griffin. Lindsay Heath. Grace Hildebrand. Madison Imprada. Leah Lapham, did I say that right? Or is it right? Amy last name's Levitt. And it gets cannibalized all the time, so I want to make sure I get him right at all. Angela. Angela is not here. Liana McPhee. Emma Miller. McKenna Mulaney. Davis Murphy. Morgan Owens.
Well, in abstention, we clap.
Miley Rizzo. Cameron Sylvia. Moira Ware. All right.
It's a great save
Good
though.
answer. So I don't know if you guys want to take pictures quickly and then we'll,
Don't be shy with your one.
and then I don't want you guys to go away because I'm gonna ask you to turn around and face the school committee after, okay? You want to get in there with me, coach?
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
Of course.
It's important. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Woohoo.
I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Patino, who's our school committee chair.
Now you guys take a step back. Because it's coming
Woo. No, that was fine. I didn't mind you being that close to us. So I'm going to ask my fellow school committee members for their comments. Mr. Florio.
Miss Hildebrand, are you related to Sheila Hildebrand? No, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
He's like, I don't know, maybe.
I have to be honest with you. We are pleased and proud of what you've accomplished. You've made your community proud, you made your parents proud, and you've made everybody proud, including the person I spoke on the telephone with today from Massachusetts. I'm not sure of her name. She called me up and she wanted to make sure that everything went according to plan, and she spoke to Don, Mr. Cowart, to make sure everything went well. And you just have such dedicated coaches and people who love you. And we are very fortunate to have you as Coventry High School students. Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
So did you all have fun?
Yeah, hopefully this season. So it's always fun to win, right? I liked it when I won. So thank you all. You did a great job, obviously, and you got the nice certificate to take home for it. And thanks to your coach. Thanks to the parents who probably, made some sacrifices to make sure everyone was picked up, dropped off, got to where they needed to on time. And keep it up. Hopefully you'll continue to represent us as you go into the high school. And stay involved, stay in sports, and stay active. I'm sure you're all becoming friends just part of this. So it's a great experience. Enjoy it. And thank you.
And my final comments is that, again, we're so proud of you. We're so happy that you're able to come together as a team. We thank you all for your hard work and your athletic ability. Hopefully that is something that will carry you through life and you'll remain active for the rest of your lives, and encourage, if you have children, your children or your family members, nieces and nephews, to also play and be involved with team sports. How many of you have played on a team previously in soccer? Oh, so is it the rec league in town? No? Oh, here? Pros, yeah. So it was in school? So, no? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I figured, yeah, because we have a pretty good rec league. Again, we thank your parents for their commitment to taking you to practice, because that can consume a lot of time from you as well. And also that the fact that you do your homework and are good students as well. So that's quite an achievement to be proud of. And I hope you get a whole lot more certificates of achievement in your career, and you'll plaster them all over your walls, hopefully. But again, we are very happy and pleased to have you here and to honor your success. So we wish you the very best in the coming years. And you can turn back around and just, I don't know, did we ask if parents wanted to say anything? Is there anybody in the group that would like to say something? If you could come to is there a microphone? Yeah. If you could come to the microphone here. I can't see. I have to stand up and see who's, yeah. Yeah, bring it down. Just bring it down for her, because someone can do
You're
that.
gonna have to click it on too.
Oh, click it on too,
Slide the switch on top.
on the side. Yeah.
Nope. There you go.
Okay.
So our boys soccer team is fully funded. However, we are not. Will that change?
I think we already voted on that to change it. Yes.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Woohoo!
We fully funded it. so,
Yep.
two meetings ago. So
Yep.
for this year right now. We'll talk about it in our budget. next
That took a
year,
lot
so
of courage.
We'll be in touch with funding the money that you guys have raised. So-
Anybody? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's it. I think.
Anybody from the
Is there anyone else
public?
Wants to say anything? No.
Sure, can I just-
Oh, yeah.
If you could
First
come
of all,
to
I'd like
the,
to thank my other new assistant principal for advocating for us. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. We just made that job tonight. But anyways, parents, I want to thank you for everything that you've done. One of the great things is how you raised your girls. It's a really great thing when I call and contact other principals. I spoke to two of them, of which the girls went to, and they played a game, and they said just what a wonderful group of girls. So that to me, girls, that says way more than your ability to play soccer, even though I love that and I love having the season that you have. I am so proud of you for that. Also, Coach Maury, if you didn't know this, not only is she a parent here in the community, but this is her first year of coaching our girls team. So finally, girls, again, like I said, you made me so proud. It was a wonderful season, and I hope you have a good rest of your career. And the rest of you that are staying here, I can't wait for next season. So thank you so much.
Yay.
thank you, Mr. Lucian. So before we let you go, I think you all deserve a standing ovation from all of us. Woo-hoo! Okay, so you guys can leave because I know you have homework to do and you might not want to sit through this whole meeting unless you really want to, which we'd be glad to have you. But we'll let you go. Thank you so much for
See you
coming.
next year. Hope to see you again.
Bye, thank you. Okay, that's always fun. Moving on to item number 7, introduction of Mr. Ryan Raffanelli, Assistant Principal of the Shawn Feinstein Middle School.
Mr. Lucian, do you mind, would you mind coming up with Mr. Raffanelli, Ryan here, and just, if you don't mind, just, Mr. Lucian was obviously instrumental as being the principal of the Shawn Feinstein Middle School. We know that Miss Norbelucci is taking on a fellowship at RIDE for a couple of years. And, we weren't sure how this would go in terms of getting candidates this time of year, but we have an outstanding gentleman here, and Mr. Ryan Raffanelli, who puts 100% into it every single day. I'm sure it's an eye-opening experience, but I didn't know, Mr. Lucian, if you wanted to say a few words.
Yeah, so coming into a school year, you all know, in the midst of a school year is a very challenging situation. He has come in, he is learning, he wants to learn. He was already in. I asked him and said that I needed to look at some our CAT scores. With that being said, he was already sorting them by grade level, sorting them by subject content area, and I can't ask for anything more than that. He's eager to learn. One of the big things on his interview of why we decided that we thought he would be our best candidate was that he said that I'm eager to learn anything, and I promised I would put 100% effort in, and I can't ask for anything more than that. He's been coming in, he's been putting his 100% effort in. The only fault that I could get him on is that he was our boys soccer coach that we competed against. And his team did a little better than ours. Other than that, we can't hold him for that, because now he's with us and he's going to take and help us out, but he's been wonderful, and I can't ask for anything more. So welcome aboard, and thank you for choosing us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Did you want to say anything, Ryan?
It's just, this is an awesome community that I am so thrilled to be a part of, and I'm looking forward to, give my 100% every day and learning as much as possible to benefit all of our students in our community. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Lovely. Mr. Florio, did you have any comment?
Mrs. Raffanelli, do you have any relatives who went to Mount Pleasant High School?
Yes, I have.
I thought so. Because we had a good time back then in the 70s. Yes, we did. And I'm sure they're very proud of you and proud of your accomplishments. And I am so grateful that you came to Coventry, and it's working with one of the best principals in our system.
Thank you very much.
So thank you. Thank you. I think you're going to make a great team. Serious. Thank you. Have a good experience.
Mr. Murray, I know you can't top that, so.
No, I don't know any of his relatives, so I'm at a loss for words. So you're glad to know that, I'm sure. No, just all I can say is welcome to the district, welcome to the middle school. As you've seen, it's expansive and sometimes difficult to manage, but I'm sure you'll do just fine under Mr. Lucian's leadership. And just anything that we can support, we will. And I'm sure you'll be well accepted into the district and your school. And I'm sure you're getting a good education already. It sounds like you're already doing some good stuff. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
And my final is a welcome as well. And I'm so glad that we were able to give you a learning opportunity. You have a great mentor, and other people in the district that are principals and assistant principals are wonderful. So we are just happy to have you. So welcome. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 8, which is Coventry's emergency connectivity fund award, discussion and vote.
Hey, everyone, how you doing?
Hi.
So we're going to talk a little bit about what the Emergency Connectivity Fund means for Coventry.
Mhm.
Want to go to the next one? All right, so you might have a question, what is the Emergency Connectivity Fund, the ECF? So this was passed as part of the last stimulus package. It's to provide money to support connectivity, particularly to support students that are learning at home, distance learning, that kind of stuff. It was funded at $7.17 billion. And in the first round, they awarded, I believe it was around $5 billion. Who's eligible? Schools and libraries that are already part of the E-rate program could apply for this. It covers computer equipment, Wi-Fi hotspots, and other equipment that you would use to connect students to do distance learning. Maximum of $400 per device, laptop or Chromebook, and $250 for Wi-Fi hotspots. We applied for Chromebooks for students in K to grade 2, those that weren't covered with the devices that we already purchased in the last year. Chromebooks for teacher assistants, which is something that we've never done here. We're pivoting away from Chromebooks for teachers to a full Windows laptop. And we also applied to cover the handful of wireless hotspots that we've been issuing to families throughout the pandemic to make sure they're able to stay connected at home. He's trying to make me longer than he is. So what we approved for, yeah, he is. So they approved all of the Chromebooks that we requested for teachers, teaching assistants, and students. They approved our request for Windows laptops at the maximum of $400 per unit. And the price on those was $632.06. And the hotspots were fully funded. So what will be the impact of us getting approved for this? We'll now be fully one-to-one for a device for every student, every teacher, and every teaching assistant from grades K all the way to 12, supplementing what we already purchased earlier in the year and last year. Grades K through 2, the device will be only used at school unless there is a need for distance learning. We're going to be able to retire all of our old computers that are used in the classroom, which automatically positions us to be ready for Windows 11, which will happen in the next year or so. The big impact is that these devices will be better for teachers to use for distance learning. The experience will be better for the students at home. And we're going to provide additional opportunities for PD for staff and families. All right, so the reason we're coming before you tonight is that the fund covers around $481,000 of this proposed project, and it has a shortfall of around $93,000. And we're looking to utilize some of the ARP COVID-19 funds to cover the shortfall. And I think if you have any questions.
Mr. Florio, anything for Mr. Murphy?
No questions.
Mr. Murray?
Thanks for the presentation, Jim.
It's just a quick one, but
No, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, first I want to say thanks. I'm assuming, did you write the grant?
I did, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
so thank you for putting in the time to obtain the funds, and
Mhm.
obviously this was stuff that we either wanted or should have had or both. And
Mhm.
so, obviously it relieves our budget. It also gets us better equipment. So thank you. Obviously, I'm gonna have a question on funding because we have 93,000. Is this from the approved ESSER 1 to ESSER 2 funds, or like, is this prospective funds we haven't spent yet?
This is ARP funds for ESSER 3.
So have we received any?
We haven't
Are these-
received them at this point in time now.
Okay, but
The ESSER 2 funds we are receiving, we'll be receiving in the next month or so.
so this would be prospected on ESSER 3,
It would be prospected on ESSER 3.
and we're sure it qualifies. It won't be an issue.
Yeah, there's no
Okay.
problems with this. That's exactly what ESSER 3 was.
Okay, I just, we gotta ask.
Yeah.
So we're going to front the money. We do expect this money back
Correct.
in the ESSER 3. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's all the questions I have.
I just have one, or maybe a couple. I understand why teachers need a laptop as opposed to a Chromebook. They're more powerful, et cetera. Just wondering how, one of the reasons why we went with Chromebooks is because we didn't have to worry about sort of software updates and stuff, because it's just an app sort of device. And so how will the laptops be given out? I mean, will you be the administrator that can download software, and is there a suite of software and that's all they can use on their machine?
Yes,
kind of thing?
we'll preload the machines before they go out. We have a system in place that will give us the ability to remotely install, and patching and all that stuff will be managed.
Oh, good. So it'll automatically update for them when they're at home or wherever the machine is.
Yes, yep.
Okay. Hopefully not in the middle of class.
Well,
You can always say we're stuck.
The
our
idea would
shoes or
be for
whatever.
it to happen in the evening. So that
Yeah,
might be
exactly.
a little bit of PD that we need to provide for
Yeah.
people to make sure that they're updating these things as
Right.
they need to. We also can pull reports of things that are not updated to make sure that, if someone's not doing it, then we need to say, all right, you're going to do it right now.
Right.
So that kind of thing.
Cool. All
So-
right. Sounds like a good plan. Yeah, go ahead.
And I think Mr. Murray, addressed this, but I think it's important again to recognize these are not local funds. These are from local tax, from our local appropriation. These are funds that we were entitled to, but again, Mr. Murphy wrote this grant, and the ESSER 3 funds. Mr. Sands had indicated it's an appropriate use for that. We're trying to improve our technology systems. But I think what's most important is these are devices that we would have had to pay for, like the hotspots we were paying for to make sure families, and all these other devices we're purchasing would have been coming out of our local appropriation. So I think each week we keep identifying ways that we're using these funds, not only to, these funds to address our needs, but it's also at some point will allow us to take that out of the operations, right? So, because we know that these are one-time funds. So I just wanted to make that point that again, we're using these funds strategically, appropriately. And again, I want to finally just again, thank Mr. Murphy for, there's a lot of effort and time and that goes into this in research and that's a lot of stuff we don't see behind the scenes, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all your efforts on this. I do have a question, kind of a follow-up on that as well. I know there are machines across the district that are used, maybe desktops that maybe have been used in like elementary or even upper levels. I think I read that those are all going to be kind of.
Right, the ones in the classroom that wouldn't touch our clerical staff or
Yeah.
our administrative staff. But
So I guess what's the vision of the strategic plan for the future? I know we're going to be saving some money of local, in our budget, but I assume, do you get an automatic sort of part of the budget for replacement machines?
there is,
Yeah.
and this year, because of the way we purchased the Chromebooks, we freed that up, but that's something
Okay.
that we'll have to consider going into
So
the
it just
future.
is the rest of the machines across the district, the same thing, kind of thing.
Right, but we didn't have that in place for the desktop
I know,
environment,
yeah, I
right? So
know,
some of
yeah.
that stuff is coming up on 10 to 12 years old. So
Exactly.
yeah, this is a major shot in the arm.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah. One positive thing about COVID.
Well,
Anyway, thank you again. Before we finish this topic, we have to actually make a motion first, I guess, and then I'll ask the public. Any further questions from the committee? I don't think, right? So is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve Coventry's Emergency Connectivity Fund Award as presented, including the supplemental funds requested from the American Recovery Plan.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Anything from the public on this particular agenda item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you again,
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Ms.
Appreciate
Murphy.
it. All right, moving on to agenda item number 9, the revised senior accountant job description, discussion and vote, which was our reference number 2. Mr. Levis,
Sure,
did you
just-
want to?
It was,
Take this.
we took into consideration last time. First, I want to thank the school committee for approving it. It's very timely. we definitely need to add support to our finance department. But we also took into consideration the recommendations that were brought forward by Mr. Murray, I believe, and Mr. Pearson. You'll notice that we did change the title to Deputy Finance Director. We changed the minimum of 5 years in accounting, financial management experience, 10 years preferred. And we would just want to highlight, because we heard what Mr. Murray said about the certified public accountant. We also, we wanted to make sure that it was, we looked at equivalent training and or experience. So it isn't just an absolute, but we felt strongly or do feel strongly that we'd like to see an individual that had that. But we did hear loud and clear that there may be people that have equivalent skill sets and experience, and we want to make sure that we highlighted that. So we're just coming before you. We appreciate again the approval of the funding or the range and the position, but we want to make these changes and ask for you to either give us some more feedback or vote on this tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Levis. Mr. Florio, any questions or concerns?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Mr. Murray?
Yeah, no real questions. I just wanted to say thank you for incorporating the comments. Obviously they were taken, and that's nice to see once in a while that we have an impact. And I truly hope that changing that title and doing a couple of these tweaks will actually net you better and more candidates. So I wish you the best if this passes to get the people you need for your supports, Mr. Sands.
Yeah, and I appreciate the rework on the job description. Greatly appreciated. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, is this Deputy Finance Director or Senior Accountant position?
Yeah, we should, just read it as the deputy.
Okay, Madam Chair, I make a motion
Finance.
to approve the revised Deputy Finance Director job description as presented.
I second the motion.
Any other further questions from the committee? Anything from the public? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries 3-0. Happy hunting. Okay, moving on to item number 10, the Rhode Island State Assessment, RICAS, SAT and PSAT update and discussion. And I'm thinking that might be Mr. Cowett. It's okay.
Oh, great.
So before I get started with this, this is a initial report of our results. We haven't done a deep dive into all the different grade levels, all the different subgroups. This information was just released to the school departments and the public last week. And Mrs. Anzalone and myself went to a meeting at Department of Ed last week where they went through some of the information that they had pulled together. I actually took some of their slides and included it in the presentation just so you can see some context of where we are as a state, where we are as a community, and how they, in some places, align to each other, and some places are a little bit different. So, so the first thing that this is from Department of Ed. The first thing that they did in terms of setting the stage for this this year's results is, they want to take some time for you to all, reflect back on the impact of COVID on education. Want people to make sure they think about how different teaching and learning was last year and the year before. So COVID has had a significant impact on schools. And that, one of the things they called out, and we called it out at the local level, is it's no reflection on the work and the effort of our teachers and our educators and our parents and our families in keeping their kids moving forward and engaged in education. But there were impacts on their learning that were, in some cases beyond our control. And when I say learning, I'm talking about their academic and their social emotional learning. There was significant impact. And not to get off topic, but we have seen the significant impact on their social emotional learning and their mental state this year. We've seen that impact. It's carried right into this year. Unlike many states, Rhode Island did give the standardized assessment last year. Many other states did not. We did.
And like most states that did give it, we saw statewide and locally significant decreases in our proficiency. But the telling thing that I'm going to point out a few times while I do this presentation is it's not just about proficiency. In many cases, it's also about participation. Participation in state assessments was impacted across the board, but most significantly at the middle school. For kids to take the state assessment, there was no at-home option. The kids had to come into school to take the assessment. At the elementary level, in grades 3, 4, and 5, we had somewhere between 85 to 90% of our kids pretty much in school during this assessment period in April and May. At the middle school, we had a full team at each grade level home, which is about 100 kids. So there's a distance learning team at 6th grade, distance learning team in 7th grade, distance learning team in 8th grade. And many of those kids did not come into school for the assessment. They stayed home for a reason. And even though we tried to schedule it in a way that would make it, safe for them and comfortable for them, they didn't come in and participate. So our data, the state data, national data is, there could be places where subgroups are overrepresented or underrepresented, which impacts your data. So there's a profile for Coventry. And if you look up in the left-hand corner, it talks about our proficiency in RICAS and SAT. And you'll see the number in green, and then next to it, you'll see the red arrow pointing down, which shows you how much those scores went down in comparison to 19. As a reminder, we did not give the test in 20. So the last full year, assessment year was 18-19. And so they're comparing the scores to 2 years ago. And underneath proficiency, you'll see participation, significantly impacted, how many kids participated in the assessment. This is just Coventry. To the right-hand side, you will see in the first bar, 18, in the second bar, 19. The third bar where it says COVID is no test, and the fourth bar is the assessment we gave in 21. The good news, and I'm not going to say there's a lot, but the good news is you could see between 18 and 19 across the board, we were going up. We were heading in the right direction. The bad news is this last year, 21, was not a good year for our community and not a good year for most of the state. There were a few places that had glimmers of success. Most of those places had smaller districts that were able to get a lot of kids in. And on the bottom, I put a yellow arrow and I just pointed it towards, and I know it's hard to see, but our economically disadvantaged families at first blush were impacted significantly. These are our families that lost their jobs, did not have the income stream that they were accustomed to, and in many cases struggled in many ways. And so they were impacted significantly. Statewide, the takeaways are obviously that performance declined. RIDE is kind of using this as a new baseline. They're saying, it's been a number of years since we've given the test successfully and that education hasn't been disrupted. So this becomes our new baseline. Participation declined for RICAS and also for SAT, but you'll see for a Coventry at least, SAT numbers weren't as low as in some other places because for many of our students, SATs has value because they use it to get into college. Whereas the RICAS test in elementary school and middle school is a measurement tool that we use to assess our proficiency and how we're doing as a community, but doesn't really impact their grade. It doesn't have a specific value to the students, in many cases, the families. One thing that was called out by RIDE is that even though our scores went down, other states, and especially Massachusetts, who we're often compared to, had a bigger drop than we did. They were also scoring a little bit higher than we were. And so there's a significant learning loss. And they pointed out that in the urban districts, it was very high as compared to suburban. So these are busy slides, I'm not going to lie. This is elementary. This is the RICAS. This is the ELA results. The top bar is 3rd grade. The middle section is 4th grade. The bottom section is 5th grade. And all I did is I used a red circle. There's just a call out. That's where our 3rd grade is compared to last year. And so In that one first section on the top where you see that first red circle, that's basically showing you that we had fewer kids score in the either meeting or exceeding range. And most of those kids seem to switch to the partially meeting category, right? They went from green to yellow. So those are kids who are, by our definition, kind of cuspy kids, right? They slid down to a partially meeting range. Those are our third graders ELA. Fourth grade actually was fairly close to where they were the prior year. So fourth grade had some loss in ELA, but not as much as as some of the other grades. But, at the same time, the fourth grade results weren't phenomenal the year before. And then fifth grade had a significant decline. You can see between what was considered meeting expectation and partially meeting, you can see where the scores have gone down. You'll see on the left-hand side, the red section, those are the kids that are not meeting expectations. For the most part in ELA, those scores weren't significantly impacted at the elementary level, but you'll see here, when I jump to middle school, the difference is in two places, right? We're seeing a number of kids who were last year, in 19, meeting and exceeding, sliding to partial, but we also see now a number of kids who are not meeting. And that's a little bit different, right? But there's another set of circles that are in blue that I put up there that's different than elementary. That's the participation rate at the middle school. And I called this out at the beginning of the presentation. And Ride put that asterisk, that little warning sign. Under 80% of the kids participated in the test in sixth grade, 71% of the kids in seventh grade, 75% of the kids in sixth grade. That's significant. That's significant. And back what I said in the beginning about over and underrepresented groups, and we can't tell you what those groups are because we don't know. But what I will say to you is when you have that many kids not take the assessment, it's going to impact your scores significantly. Whereas the elementary level did not have that. If I go back to the elementary slide just briefly, you'll see participation was 89 in third grade, 86 in fourth grade, and 90 in fifth grade for ELA. So those kids, only about 10% of those kids are out of school. Whereas at the middle school, we had about 25, sometimes almost 30% of the kids out of school.
Yep.
That's ELA for ICAS. Switching to math. Math across the state got hit the hardest, by the way. You'll see at the elementary level, big impact in math with the number of kids who are not meeting. You'll see in fourth grade, that impact is there. Fifth grade, the impact wasn't as significant. Jumping to middle school, the pattern from ELA continues. We have a low numbers in participation, and when you see low numbers of participation, you see more kids not meeting expectation. I also called out with some of the arrows pointing down that in mathematics, the partially meeting number almost didn't change between 19 and 21. What changed significantly is the number of kids who were meeting versus the number of kids who were not meeting. The story here is participation impacted the scores significantly. And in mathematics, the number of kids meeting versus the number of kids not meeting was a little bit more significant. High school, PSAT and SAT, just as a school. PSAT is not as high stakes as SAT. You know that. We've presented that to you before. Our PSAT scores compared from the prior testing period were not significantly different. So our PSAT scores between 19 and 21, you can see it right there in ELA, are almost the same. Below, you'll see the SAT for ELA. More kids not meeting the standard versus meeting or exceeding. Our meeting and exceeding score in 21 was 59%, and in 19, excuse me, we back up. In 19 was 59%, and in 21 was 47. So it was about 12 percentage points lower in SAT, ELA. High school, PSAT and SAT, math is pretty much the same again with PSAT. The scores are pretty consistent, not as high stake tests. And you'll see the significant difference in math at the SAT is the kids who are, moved over to the partial category. There's a lot more information to come around this once we dig into it. Like Mr. Lucian had talked about, Mr. Raffanelli had started going into it. There's a lot of things you can do. So some general observations, just based on what I've looked at in the last like 3 or 4 days, is that there was, and I've said this all the way through, so I'm repeating myself, but there was a decrease in performance. There was a decrease in participation, especially at the middle school. And that subgroups could be either over or underrepresented, depending on, that data. We saw a decrease in student growth scores. So if you recall, they measure cohorts of kids compared to how they performed the prior testing session. And if you score 50, you're pretty much on par for how you are your growth. If you're over 50, your growth is ahead of the curve. If you're under 50, you're not growing as fast as you should be. And our growth scores were lower, pretty much under 50 in all categories. And I called this out already. Economically disadvantaged kids were impacted, and increase in the number of kids not meeting expectations. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, and it's important for us to kind of think about that work. And this plan is a very high level plan, but a lot of it is stuff and information we've presented to you already. I had called out how in the score between 18 and 19 had gone up, especially in RICAS. And that was a year that we had implemented a new test prep strategy. In the past, when standardized testing was coming up, the week before, 2 weeks before, the teachers would do a lot of practice tests, and there'd be a lot of time spent on getting ready for the test. And that sometimes gets interpreted as almost like teaching to the test. And we don't want to be that district. So what we started doing in 18-19 is we pulled together the curriculum coordinators, the teachers, the administrators, and we created, it was almost a 2-month plan, a ramp-up plan, where we were giving kids questions along the way, and we were embedding it into their teaching and into their pre-session work and homework, and using it as opportunities to teach and reteach in a more gradual way. And we saw some good results. I'm not saying we blew the charts off, but it went from 18 to 19, things went up. We want to go back to what we had started and continue that process. We need to tweak it because there's new information. When you have a test, there's always an item analysis where you get to look at each question and look at the percentage of kids who answered that question correctly as compared to the state and compared to, each other. So that was the action plan that we had started. We're going to continue looking at our subgroups, especially our kids who are economically disadvantaged. We are working on and continue working on our MTSS model, and we use that model to identify and support students who are needy in a proactive way versus a reactive way. And then Mrs. Anzalone was before you last meeting talking about all the high quality curriculum work that we're doing. We feel that that's going to have an impact on scores. And then the other thing is we're just going to have to keep an eye on attendance and participation and make sure kids are getting into school and make sure we continue to reach out to those families who need support so that we can get them what they need. And the only other thing I didn't put on the slide that I think is worth mentioning is in a proactive way, before the summer, before any information was shared, Mr. Levis partnered with the Substance Abuse Task Force and did events all summer long to get kids out of their houses and back into the community. We ran a number of summer programs. We partnered with the Y. We partnered with REC. We had the kids from the middle school go to the high school for CTE. We did a lot of programming before we even got these scores. And that was in anticipation of knowing that we were going to have some had nothing to do with the scores. We knew kids were struggling, and we wanted to make sure we supported them and their families in an SEL way, but also in an academic way. So this is not a surprise to us. It's disappointing. I don't think anybody thought, hey, our scores are going to go up. We just were hoping they wouldn't be as impacted as they are. And other communities felt the same way. Mrs. Anzalone was with me. We were all kind of dreading our data and as we went through it. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Cowett. Mr. Florio, any questions for Mr. Cowett?
No, but I do have some observations.
Yep.
In 2020, that was an election year for me, so I did a lot of walking, and I spoke to a lot of parents, and they were really happy by the fact that even though it was a pandemic, even though it was tough and they were financially strapped and the kids had to work and all that they were still able to graduate. We were still able to have the programs we normally do in terms of awards, in terms of recognition, and particularly last graduation. They were very appreciative of the efforts that were put forward by the school department for their children, be it elementary, middle school, or high school. The fact that Mr. Levis was out there in the summer giving out free lunches, that we actually showed that we cared about our children. Parents were very appreciative of that. And we all knew that the grades were, that learning was going to suffer because of this pandemic, and it did. But at the same time, it brought out the best in people too. It brought out the best in our kids, because when they finally did have a chance to go back, they really appreciated going back to school and being with their friends. And
I would say I agree with you 100%. And that's why I opened up with, this is no reflection on the teachers and the effort of the families to keep their kids engaged. It was an unfortunate situation. And I agree with you, because the teachers went above and beyond at every school and every year, both in 19, 20 and 21, to find ways to engage kids and keep them involved. If this were any other regular year and we saw scores go down like this, I would be screaming from the rooftops. I'm still disappointed, but I don't look at it as being like a regular year. It was an off year. And I'm not saying that's an excuse, because nobody likes excuses. I'm just saying it was an off year, and we have to take that into consideration.
I appreciate your efforts in moving forward, and the parents do as well, and the community does as well. So all I can say is thank you, Mr. Carworth and Mr. Levis, and the teachers and support staff and everyone, because we showed the best of what we can do during the worst of times. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mr. Murray.
Thanks for the presentation, Don. And I know you'd love to dig down deeper. I think this is what we needed right now to kind of get the big view. Well, I'm not always a big fan of the education commissioner, but I do respect the fact that when she issued this, she kind of tempered expectations and also said, to parents, don't freak, essentially. Like, and we need to keep doing what we're doing, not change once again to a new testing system or a new way of doing things. Because I think one thing we found with Massachusetts is why they're so successful is they created things like frameworks and whatnot, and they stuck to it for a long time. So I think, we're not looking to, but I guess my question is, has the state, this was across the state. So has the state come out with anything as far as, what their anticipation is of any additional supports to help us catch up?
What the state had brought up is there was a LEAP task force that they put together last year. And the LEAP task force was superintendents and educators and people from the Annenberg and all the different agencies that support learning. And they identified a number of different things that they thought would have the biggest impact. And things that we did, transitioning kids into school again, high school into 8th graders into 9th graders, kindergarten, transitioning, looking at attendance, supporting kids through SEL. But they also want, and this is something that we've done, is for communities to put their ESSER money into things that they think are going to impact learning and education. And that's why a lot of the things we've been talking about have to do with using ESSER money to support curriculum work, to support, we added staff, and we know that we may not be able to keep that same level of staffing forever, but we did know that we were going to have a number of kids that qualified for interventions, and we wanted to have the staff available to work with those kids. So we put money into staffing so that kids would have support. We also used a lot of that money, like I said earlier, over the summer to keep kids engaged in learning. So they're hanging a lot of it on the LEAP task force and making sure that you spend, and Harold can speak about it is way better than I can. When you look at the application in ESSER, everything has to be aligned and everything has to be spent in a way that's going to have a significant impact on kids. And then the other thing I was going to say to you is that when we did our reopening plan and with COVID, that also had to be tied to LEAP. So a lot of the things that the state is doing around initiatives is based out of that task force.
Thanks. It's disappointing in that I know the things you were doing. I remember the presentations you gave on the fact that you're putting a lot of intensive effort on ramping up towards the testing, and we saw results of that. And it's really hard to gain ground, and it's very easy to lose it. So, hopefully the state will come forward with additional supports to help us catch up. But the only thing I can say is, obviously we want to do a deeper dive into the results, try to figure out what we can. And then, I think you're doing the right thing. I've been very supportive of the curriculum, spending a lot of funds there, because I think curriculum is something that will pay off dividends for the next decade. And an investment now, I don't look at it as this isn't going to get corrected in a year. It's going to take 5, 10, upwards of 20 years to finally get probably where we want to be. All we can do is just stay the course. So thanks for your efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. I have a couple of questions, I guess. Has there been any discussion at the state level or even amongst our own central office staff about what this actually represents? So I read some things, there were predictions because of kids having to deal in the whole thing of COVID and the pandemic, that there was going to be learning loss. So it was pretty predictable. But I read various things that said, maybe we'd have 6 months worth of loss or 1 year worth of loss, or, some kids would be better able to catch up than others. And so I was just wondering, the drop in scores, is that ever correlated to an actual time of learning loss? So
The only thing I recall, Mrs. Anzalone was there, so she could chime in if there's something I'm missing, but they tried to make a correlation between learning loss and in-school learning.
Right.
And their case and argument was the districts that had the least amount of learning loss and the districts that had maybe in some places some either break even or improvement were schools that had more in-person learning.
Mhm.
But there are so many variables. Every
Yeah,
community is
there are.
different.
Mm.
Every community was impacted by COVID differently. And there was many different models put in place. Some people, we took a kind of a slow and steady approach in the beginning of 2021. We put our K in
Mhm.
and pre-KK, then 1, 2, then 3, 4. And by the time our high school kids got in, it was the middle of October. We had a hybrid model in place. We had our share of COVID that we were knocked out a few different times. Our high school was knocked out like 3 times. That was our reality. Somebody else's reality might have looked different, and that still exists. I mean, when we look at our COVID numbers now, and I know Mr. Levis is going to share it later on, what happens in Coventry is very different than what happens in Exeter, West Greenwich, and it's one town over. It's
Right.
I don't know why, but there are some differences.
Mhm.
We have case numbers that look different, and that's community. That it has to do with the community,
Right.
and the only other thing is, other communities are in different places of their curriculum rollout. Cumberland, we're often compared to Cumberland. Cumberland is 2 or 3 years ahead of us
Mhm.
on their curriculum rollout. So even though they were impacted by COVID, when their kids were in school,
They
when
already
they
were
were
ahead
still,
of
they were already getting the high quality curriculum materials that we've been trying to get ahead of.
So I'm hopeful that if we ever get back to normal, that our growth will be a little bit more than even 18 to 19. Like all of a sudden, we're going to see a jump because kids are really back in the classroom, and a lot of the stress and anxiety everyone has been feeling, including our children and our students, might get alleviated a bit. So I'm hopeful for that. And again, the scores aren't at all a surprise to me. But I think, I'll echo with what Mr. Florio said, that I think the exceptional work was done, given accomplished and done given the circumstances. And that's even for our kids. We have to give our kids credit too. Because, it's not just about the people that are teaching. So, and I have to feel for them because they lost a lot. And so that can really affect the way a kid even approaches a test. because they're in a mood that's different than if they were, there weren't the stresses of the pandemic going on in the culture that they're living in. So I'm hopeful that some of this is going to go away. And
To that point, we give the STAR assessment, which
Yep.
we've brought to you folks,
Yep.
and we've continued to give it. And one of the things we look at when we give the STAR assessment is not only the score, but
Mhm.
how long the student took the test.
Yeah.
And sometimes we see students who, initially they flag as being underperforming,
Mhm.
but then we look at the assessment, and the assessment that should have taken them 30 minutes took them 8.
Yeah.
And we started saying to ourselves, well, why?
Mm.
And in some cases, the child clicked right through to be done. And when we take that student or maybe a group of students aside and say, we're going to do this again, and we improve the testing conditions, and we do maybe like a little pep talk, some goal setting, we see a significant improvement.
It is mindset sometimes. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Is there anything from the audience? Any comments or questions? Nope. Seeing none, we can move on. Again, thank you for this report. I found it fascinating. And I know you guys will use it and drill down and figure out all those great things that you always do to try to figure out how to do better on certain questions and whatever. Moving on to, we're going to table item number 11. But since there was a vote scheduled, I'd like to vote to table this. We don't have all the information to discuss this tonight, so it'll go on maybe next meeting's agenda. So could we have a motion to table?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to table Western Coventry Elementary School modular classroom discussion and vote.
I second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 3-0. Moving on to item number 12, which is the revised policy, GBEBB, Employee Student Relations Policy, our first reading, which was our reference number 3.
So I just I gave you a copy, the copy that has a tab on, it's the original.
Yep.
The other one is the revised copy. And as the policy subcommittee often does, we brought this back to actually add one sentence to it. And that turned into a couple of times reviewing it and really just, there's nothing of substance that's been changed, but just realizing that we condensed it. There was a different attorney. I think Mr. Anderson worked with us on the first time, Mr. Clough the second time. And so it's really just a lot of condensing, cleanup. It was all cleanup.
Yeah.
Like I said, we spent 2 sessions on it. And the intent was just to add a sentence. So you'll look at, there's a lot of, changing, the language has been changed a bit. We added some shalls. We moved the policy statement got changed and then it got brought down after, you'll see on the second page, and we changed that because it's really about employee discipline. And then you'll just see the other changes. So there are a lot of changes, but it didn't change the intent of the
Substance.
policy, the substance. But again, we're going to add one sentence to it. And then we ended up spending 2 policy meetings on this. And this is just the first reading
Yeah.
also. We'll bring it back again and I'll clean it up. But I think it flows better, it reads better.
Yeah, I thought so.
We
too.
have more consistency. You'll see a
Yep.
lot of it's just adding, like where it was school employees, I put Coventry Public School employees. So.
Yep.
So,
All right. Any questions for Mr. Levis before we move on this?
I had no question, just, take a look at the purpose. I think there's some past tense mixed with current. So
okay.
just take another read through. That's all. But the content was fine for me.
Okay, the purpose, yeah.
All right. Are we ready to, Mr. Flory, did you have anything?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is there a motion to dispense with the first reading?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to dispense with the first reading of the revised policy GBEBB, Employee Student Relations as presented.
I second the motion.
Anything from the public? Any questions? Seeing nothing, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 3-0. Moving on to agenda item number 13, school building committee update. Mr. Murray, I assume you are going to take this?
Yeah. So where do I start? So we've decided, after some
Okay.
discussion between the town and myself, yesterday, that we're going to change the date of our update meeting, our presentation to council to November 22nd to give us a little more time to prepare and to ensure we're well represented. As some of you know, we did have a meeting of the leadership and the town manager and finance director today. I will say it was interesting. I don't think I want to expand too much. I'm still trying to come to some common ground on how we can move forward on this. I don't know if we'll find it. I think there's differing opinions, to be quite honest, on how the schools view it and our interpretation of how the town probably could use this as a leverage point moving forward for the town and really being a good project. And there's definitely concerns on the town side. So I think what's going to happen is, we're going to give the building committee is going to come together on the 22nd. We expect to give a robust presentation, give the council what they asked for, which is kind of rectifying the Jacobs report in our stage 1 and the needs with what we're doing, give them as much information and empowerment as we can. And then it's going to be up to them to decide whether they're going to put it to the voters to let them weigh in on a bond. All we have asked along this whole process was, in the way we see it, is there's a threshold to be met, which the threshold really is the project attainable? Can it be done in the context of the larger finances of the town? I think we all agree that it could. It can be done. It's a matter of the will to do it. My position has always been put it to the voters and let them decide. And so, if I take it very seriously as both a committee member and a taxpayer, when somebody strips me of that right to vote. And so I urge anybody who's interested in this to stay tuned, because if you're also interested in weighing in and having your voice heard, there's 2 ways to do it right now. One is, let your elected representative know that you're interested in at least having a voice in the process. And also letting them know that, this is a big decision for the district. And if you're, I say it for or against the project, they need to hear your voice. From our standpoint, it should be for, because whether you like it or don't like it, I think the ultimate voter is voting on the bond itself and not allowing our other elected officials kind of take that away. So the building committee and I think the finance team is going to meet again. That's my hope. And we'll be preparing the presentation for the 22nd. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Dave.
November 8th. Are we still going? Is there? a meeting?
No, so that's the meeting that will be rescheduled till the 22nd. So the 22nd will now be that presentation. And then my anticipation is that by the end of November, we will have a vote. The vote will be by the end of the month, because we really need to know whether this is moving forward or not, because there's a lot of work to be done, even just to get it to the General Assembly to do the formal passage of the enabling legislation. So and quite frankly, we have money we've expended. Where are we at? Over $300,000 on an architect we've already expended. Some of that was through grant funds. We have an OPM on board, owner's project manager on board. So I don't think it behooves the town as a whole to belabor this, because we're still expending more funds. And I think at some point we've got to make a decision, or the town council has to make a decision. So. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. I don't have any questions. Anything from the public? Any comments? Again, thank you for all the work you've done as chair of the school building committee, Luke. It's extremely appreciated by this committee as well as the school building committee, and hopefully by the town council as well. Moving on to agenda item number 14, which is the student representative to the school committee.
Yeah,
So, Mr. Levis?
I'll just start quickly. I know since when I first got here, I think we had a discussion around just my experience and other where we've had school, whether it's student council or a student representative that would come and kind of give an update. And Mr. Murray had brought it up. I think I don't want to get into his too much of his stuff, but I think you having a conversation with your daughter and saying, hey, and so he brought it to my attention. I said, let's just put it on the agenda because we did talk about there wasn't much resistance. There wasn't any resistance. It was just never really made a decision. So I thought I'd put it back on the agenda. I think it's an excellent idea. I think we just have to be respectful of young people's time and figure out how we want to do it. We could do it a rotating, I think. But anyways, so it's just a conversation tonight to kind of get some direction around that and see what the pleasure of the committee is. So, but I think it's a great idea. And I want to thank Mr. Murray for poking me again, saying, hey, we need to do something because it's true. I think we're always talking about student voice and listening to our students. And it's the only reason we're here, really for our students. So I think it's a great idea. And hopefully we can proceed, at least even if we could start it after the holidays or something somehow, but.
Mr. Florio.
Madam Chair, I think it's a great idea. I have absolutely no objection to this. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
Well, I'm obviously in support of this. No, it actually did come from my daughter. I spend a lot of time on school committee. I spend a lot of time on building committee, a lot of my volunteer efforts that are supposed to help others. And so, but I spend a lot of time away from my family. And my daughter came to me and she said, you're always talking about all the stuff that you do, but when do students ever have a voice? And, that's when the real, light bulb goes off of like, yeah, you're right. We serve, we ultimately serve the students. And like any consumer, customer, person you serve, you really should listen to them. They're the boots on the ground. And I think, listening to their concerns, that's valid, whether we agree or disagree. I think they have a right to bring it directly to us and understand. I think it's a good civics education as well, understanding the role of the school committee, because I would guess, because I didn't know what a school committee did in high school or middle school, that they don't even know we exist. But I think understanding process and, where they can take their concerns is a great education for them. So my envisionment of how this may work, it might be, obviously we have student councils at both the middle school and high school that they may be the appropriate bodies to, maybe they could rotate. I think it's really a question for them as well, that we may want to go to them and say, we're giving you this opportunity. You decide how you may want to work it, make a suggestion and come back and we work together on kind of a shared solution. That's our first challenge, right? Figure out how this works. And then from there, just listen and really, get to know the people that we serve, which are really the students. We get caught up in the budget. We get caught up in all the other stuff. I think we all enjoy the celebrations, but we only see a small population. We don't hear about the larger issues. So, and I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. I'm 100% for this proposal, but I think we do need to set some, like you said, we could go back to like the middle school and the high school. I'm not sure if a student rep wants to come to every meeting. Maybe the high school could come one meeting and maybe the middle school on another meeting. And we don't want to scare them off. We might just say that, their presentation doesn't have to be a PowerPoint unless they choose to do that. It just can be a written report and they don't have to stay for the whole meeting. We'll put them first on the agenda, for example, so that their time is workable. So if you could take the lead on that, Mr. Levis, and contact both principals and see to their respective, sometimes it's not even a student council person that might be interested. I think it should be like, almost any student that.
Well, it could. I do think that the student councils tend to address these types of issues and it creates some order and process that I think would be helpful. And it also, they're typically have a liaison that's
Right.
managing the council. So they can also help us work this out, make some suggestions.
Yep.
There's also just we could also look at not just student council, but I know they have like the president, vice
Yeah.
president. So
Sure.
we could,
Yeah.
and they have a lot, they're connected to the entire population too. So we could work it, But I will talk to the principals
Yeah.
and
there
bring
might-
that back
yeah.
at our next
Just
meeting.
Help us create a framework.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
There may even be a student who plans to maybe even go into like history of political science that is not part of the student council, I guess is what I was trying to say, because
Sure.
some people
Right.
are really interested in that, but might not do student
Right.
council.
Yeah.
So,
I think that, the general directive is let's come up with a process
Yeah,
that
exactly.
best suits. You have a team that's
Mhm.
well suited to come up with something
Yeah.
for us.
sounds like a very good idea. Cool. Anything from the public before we move on? Nothing? Okay. So number 15 is the draft school committee calendar that was in our packets, our reference number 1. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
Uh,
if you
did
don't mind,
have-
I've
yeah, you want to
just,
say something?
yeah, just that these are our regular scheduled meetings
Mhm.
that we have. But it's important to note that there are often other meetings, especially during budget season, that take place. So while these are what we have to submit to the Secretary of State's office, a calendar from January 1st to December 31st.
Any questions on Mr. Florio?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Mr. Murray?
Nope, no question.
Okay. All right, can we vote to accept the named dates as presented?
Sure, we don't have anything.
No,
There's
we
no
don't.
motion. but
There's no
we can-
motion. You can just come up and just, make it up.
I'll make it up. Madam Chair, I make a motion that the school committee calendar for 2022 be approved by the
As
school
presented.
committee.
I second the motion.
Any other further questions? Anything from the public? Yep.
All of the dates already set, full calendar year.
Yep.
Mhm.
And they'll be on the website.
Because I have to look at the website.
Yeah, we were off this month because of Thanksgiving.
But
'Cause
we have
we
a-
usually do it the second and the fourth Thursday. It's,
So we try to post them on a Friday for the following Thursday, but we had 2 meetings back to back. We had one last Thursday. So it just took us a little bit longer, the agenda, but the calendar is posted for the year. So
it
yeah,
will be.
Well, this will be this one for next year will be, but the other one should be on the website. Yes. It is, but we switch websites, so maybe that's something we'll look at. I mean,
Would
but
you
it's-
like my copy?
yeah,
Oh, right.
we're
She'll
good.
be here, don't worry.
Don't worry. I've already put them on my calendar.
You're welcome. When I said switch websites, I meant we transitioned to a new website, so it might be at a different spot, but we usually we have the school committee calendar up there. We have our regular school calendars up there, so we'll make sure that it's easy to navigate.
All right.
We'll bring her back something.
All right. So I guess I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 3-0. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Yes, I'm actually going to cover just the first bullet because there's more information on the second. We had a meeting, myself,
Okay.
Mr. Sands with Ms. Mills and Mr. Marchand yesterday, and there were some concerns around cell tower and information and revenue and how that's distributed, but we'll come back with more information. So what I want to talk about, I mentioned this last school committee meeting, we've been discussing Ms. Maycumber. I know Ms. Zaborski is here, but we've been talking about, we all know that when the high school went out, it wasn't permanent. There's a lot of concerns. Somebody had indicated looking for some data, and I'll be honest, my biggest concern, and still is the lack of the number of kids that could be vaccinated and the number that are. I don't have the most current. We're waiting for updated numbers. In August 23rd, it was 50, in the 50 percentile. So there was like 45% of the students that were still not vaccinated. I don't have an update. I can tell you we've held vaccination clinics in the school, and we've had 3 additional students in those clinics get vaccinated. So, as superintendent, I believe it's my responsibility to do as much as I can to ensure the safety of everybody, and with the Department of Health and CDC saying it's vaccination. So, but this was not permanent. We've seen our numbers go down in the high school. We've seen the contact tracing, obviously become more efficient, simplified. So, effective November 15th, which is a Monday, next week's a 4-day week. We'll be back full time. We try to come up with different adjustments. We try to come up with looking at having 4 lunches. We try to come up with something like shortening the lunch and shortening passing time. We need to make sure that all of our instructional minutes are there. But at the end of the day, we decided that we're just going to come back. And the reason we're not coming back next week is respect and talking about listening to student voice.
Yep.
While students are supposed to go back and they're supposed to log in and contact or work with their teachers, some students were working earlier, adjusted their hours, and we want to be fair to them and make sure that they have time to give notice to their employers. And also, we had meetings that are set up. So we have meetings that are scheduled next, week earlier because the students were going home, I think 12:30, 12:35. And there were meetings, and we want to be able to honor those meetings and not cancel those meetings. So that's the reason why. And I was, sometimes I get, I can be a little thick-headed, and I was adamant that, okay, we're going to come back. But I listened to Ms. Maycumber, the administration, the staff, and the students, about their concerns about just starting this coming Monday. So we will be back full-time. It also gives time for, to make sure that we're ramped up with the food service. And I'm not that concerned about that. I wasn't as concerned about the transportation. But so we will be back. We will be back, not an early release. We'll be back normal time starting November 15th. And the high school will be notifying everybody. If they haven't done so earlier today, they will be doing it, notifying students and families. And we've already reached out to food service and I believe the transportation. So I wanted to talk about that. And then the other part I want to talk about is vaccination clinic. We all know that vaccine has been approved by the CDC for 5 to 11-year-olds. And we're going to have our first vaccination clinic on, and I'll be sending information out. We'll be putting it on social media. We'll be putting it out, sending it out to families with the registration link. It'll be Friday, November 19th from 4 to 7 at the high school. And then the second clinic will be December 10th, 4 to 7 at the high school. We're going to strongly encourage as many of our staff, elementary school, middle school, because it'll be the 6th graders that'll be eligible mostly. And K to 5, we'd like to, again, it's volunteer, but see if we can get as many friendly faces for our students. This is going to be a little different than we do the 12 and up. We try to get X number of individuals per hour, and we're going to reduce that. So we're going to cut it by a third because we feel it could be a little bit more challenging, more difficult. We're hoping that what people have said to us, they feel very safe coming in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very friendly atmosphere. I think I shared last time, but our last clinic we had for 12 and older, and then also for boosters for Moderna and for Pfizer, we had over 300 individuals come, many elderly people that, that were very, very appreciative of the support that was given. So we have a great system. The police, Chief Heiss, Chief Frank Brown from Hopkins Hill and Central, Jill Dabrowska, who's the EMA director, and our staff, Jason Martin. There's many staff that have supported, from teaching assistants, supervisory assistants, to our nurses, to educators, principals, assistant principals. So I just, we're hoping that, that we have a good turnout and that people feel very safe.
What are those dates again, Mr. Levitz? 11/19 at Coventry High School. What's the time?
4 to 7, but we'll be putting
4
on
to
social
7.
media, and then December 10th,
4 to 10?
4 to 7.
4 to 7.
Right. We felt that's a good time.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
So,
Thank
and we'll
you.
continue, we're going to continue to run clinics for boosters we'll continue to run clinics for first time. We still have had the other night, even though predominantly it was booster, many people came for their Moderna or for Pfizer booster. We still had families that came and were getting their first shot. So I think we're going to continue to offer those to the community. I think, like I said, it's been a great partnership. And it's nice for people to come in and see the police, the fire, the EMA, the teachers, principals, everybody working together. So we'll continue to do that. But I think that's very positive for our community. So we'll be sending out the registration link, but it's only going to be for 5 to 11-year-olds. So this clinic is there's no boosters, on the 19th or the 10th. It's going to be just for 5 to 11-year-olds. So and the
Done?
rest of everything
All
else
set?
is just eternal vigilance, right? Just
That's
gonna keep
right.
coming every day and
I'm grateful that we've been able to do this in the schools because I think you're 100% right. It makes it so much safer. It's a friendly environment first for our children as well as our adults. And it's pretty much an easy, sign up. So thank you to everyone that's made that possible. Anything, Mr. Murray, from Mr. Levis? We're all good? Okay, anything from the public for Mr. Levis? All right. Our next item is citizens' comment. Is there any citizen that would like to comment? Sure. If you could come forward and use the mic and identify yourself too, so that people at home. No, it goes to, yeah, and you have to turn that on, yeah. It's for the video, because we can hear you. I think there's a little knob.
it's on.
Okay, my name is John McVitie. I live at 43 Highwood Drive in Coventry. I'm here to speak about CRT. I know it's been a really hot topic throughout the whole country. It's been very controversial. Kathy, I've been asking you through emails, like 3 or 4 emails throughout the summer about if you've been hearing about anything about CRT, and you've been telling me that you don't know anything about the CRT with meetings or anything like that. But I want to ask again, is CRT or any CRT concepts being taught in our schools or used in our schools?
I'm going to defer to Mr.
Yeah.
Levis.
No,
but
I want to ask the school committee.
CRT is not taught in our school system. It's not really taught in any K through 12 system.
So it's not even used at all?
It is a secondary ed, like college curriculum.
Okay.
We teach US history,
But not CRT.
not CRT.
But
It
is
doesn't
it
include it.
some kind of another name that could
No.
be used?
No.
Let me say, I know that it's going by other names now because people are trying to throw things off. Could it be called social learning practices? Do we use any social learning practices in our schools?
I'm just to say, we teach to the standards, so they're national standards. So I know there's a big push to come up with the CRT but it's a higher education, and I think if you look that, we're not trying to call anything something different. We teach American history, we teach civics, we teach things that we've been teaching for years. We're rewriting our curriculum, in the process of rewriting our social studies, many of our curriculums, and as they're rewritten, they'll be put on the website and you can go and take a look and see everything that we have. So we don't teach what's being called CRT. It's, like I said, it's a higher education, but it's something that's people are pushing on, and we can, definitely say that we don't teach it.
So there's nothing mentioned about racism at all in our schools?
Well, we'll talk about different things we'll talk about civil rights and things like that, but historical pieces. And if we look at both sides, we'll talk about different things, different courses do, but not in terms of, what's being taught about shaming and things like that. That's something that's being driven by somebody else. And, I don't think you're going to find anybody that's going to come out of here saying that, because that's what it's about.
Right. Well, my 3-year-old, my 7-year-old third grader said, second grader, he told me that on Columbus Day, he comes home and he says, what Columbus didn't discover America. It was the Indians. And I said, well, Columbus discovered America. The Indians were here. But anyways, to me, it was just kind of like a red flag went up when he told me that it could be starting in grades as young as his grade. But another question I have, what grades are they starting to use sex education, talking about homosexuality, transgenderism, things like that? What are the grades that begins?
I can't tell you off the top, but we can go back and take a look at health education, things like that. There are policies that the state has on transgender that they've said every district has to have. So I can't tell you when different things are taught.
So you don't know what grade level it starts at?
I can't tell you right now, no.
Does the school committee know what grade level it starts at?
And you're throwing out
I
different
mean,
things there. I don't know,
we start the conversation about sexual ed. Probably
I don't know.
maybe fifth, sixth. I don't know. I'm not sure
No,
myself.
not even. No,
I forget when my
I
daughter first
substituted
heard it.
at the Exeter West Greenwich High School. And it's really not even discussed until maybe the 11th or 12th grade when you start speaking about that. But it's nothing that is, how can I say it? It's not like blatant. It's not like they're showing sex films. It's none of that. It's blah. It's basically, okay, this is what happens when two people.
Wait, well, I was in school, we
Yeah,
had
you know
sex
what I was-
education way back then.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
we did.
Yeah, so I
Way
mean,
back then.
that's, these are country,
I mean, I think kids start asking.
these are suburban
questions,
districts.
Right, when they
In
start asking
elementary.
questions, that's the time, right?
Yeah.
Does the school committee understand what the curriculum in the school is?
Yeah.
You all
Yeah, yeah.
are in on all the discussions for what books are going to be used, what's going to be
Yeah, we
taught and all of
just
that.
talked about that the last meeting.
Okay.
And
I was
You're
going to come, I
asking if
was,
we know every single book.
well,
that's
I know,
offered? No.
she had it out there.
And I
I'm
think
not
we-
asking that.
No,
Kathy.
that's a fair question. I think we need to be clear that, as a policy-making body, which we are,
There you go.
we don't deal with the day-to-day. So,
Right.
there's a view that school committees should know every aspect of a school in a day with 500, 600, 700 employees. That's not really our role. So we rely on the administration to give us, like we had a discussion last meeting, to talk to us about the broad brush of curriculum, that it's being purchased through the state. It's in conformance with the standards of the state.
Mhm.
But when you start delving down into, what class, what day, when,
No, I meant
that's where, just so you understand, that's where we kind of disconnect in the administration. If they don't have the answer though, we can certainly compel and get you that answer. And we can
right.
say, if there's something specific you're asking with regard to curriculum, like have a concern, like that's a pointed question. At what age do they start sex education and start in their health, curriculum? We can get an answer like that. That's a fair question. So CRT isn't really a curriculum. It's something that's been kind of woven into a narrative that's been woven into some curriculums, and especially at secondary and, collegiate levels. But it's not something that we've, as a school committee, have said, we want this woven into our curriculum.
No.
We've
Right,
never voted on
definitely
that.
not. No.
We've never addressed it. And we've never been presented with it.
Well, I heard that it has started at the college level, but now it's starting to come down into the,
No, Miss Azzaloni gave us a detailed presentation. I think it was almost 2 hours.
when was that?
The last meeting.
Last,
It was the calendar you missed.
There'll be more curriculum meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
And it was, she had all the books on the table and she gave us stacks of paper like this. And it was really, yeah, it was nothing controversial, none of that.
Yeah, if you want to come, do you want to come?
Yeah,
And we're
better
happy
that
to
way.
gather
There you go.
specific questions and get them answers to those.
Sure.
Sure.
That's a
Yeah,
great
she's our
idea.
curriculum director. So
okay.
Yeah. She
So
can
link
show
it
you the
after the
books.
meeting. and-
Amy,
It's Amy and Saloni. I'll get your name and send you my information.
Okay,
Okay.
that's not good.
Yeah, she'll show you the books that, the new books. that
Are they
kids
the
are gonna be
books
getting.
from Ride?
Huh?
Are they the books from Ride?
No, no, no,
No,
no,
no, no, no, no,
no.
no.
Okay.
No, RIDE, the only thing RIDE has done is they publish like curriculums that have, they call them green light, basically. They match the standards that have come up. Because that's the way we teach, basically. Every grade has, there are standards that go across and then they connect with the next grade and for all the way to 12. So those standards, there are certain curriculums, that have been studied and those, we might or may not adopt them. In fact, last meeting, I think we were presented with maybe 3 different pilots that our teachers have looked at at different levels. And then they pilot something. And then if they like it the way it works with students and they see progress, then we make the purchase to actually buy.
Right.
I think the best suggestion though is like if you have the time to connect with
Yeah.
Anzalone and that way, like I said, we can find you the answers, but I'm going to tell you the same thing that we have.
Yeah, I'll exchange
pre-K
email.
to 12 plus and,
Yeah.
all these modifications. And so the best thing is if you can have the time to set up a time to meet and.
Right, well, I'll exchange emails with her.
Good.
And thank you so much. I just want to, I hear that it's coming down the pike. I hear a lot of things, you watch the news and you see all these
Yeah.
school committee meetings and the parents yelling
Yeah.
and screaming and stuff like that. And I just want to know what's going on in my grandson's schools.
Yep.
And then I just have one IT question. You're the IT person. What kind of wireless routers are we using in the schools? Are they 4G?
So that's actually something else that if you want to interact with me directly on that, I'm not really comfortable with divulging that on a meeting where someone can watch it.
We've already been
For
hacked once.
security purposes.
It's security reasons.
So I can exchange my information with you as well,
Okay,
and we can talk about that.
All right.
Offline, not in this
Public.
kind of forum.
okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Public.
Okay?
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
no
give you
problem.
Thank
anything you
Mr.
want.
McQuaid.
I mean, everything you want.
Mr. Florio will give you everything. you want.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the citizens gathered? All right, then I guess we can schedule the next meeting. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the next meeting for the next meeting of the school committee be scheduled for November 18, 2021 at the Coventry Resource and Senior Center at 6 p.m.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries 3-0. And is there a motion to adjourn? I have 8:15.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn at 8:15.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, everyone, for attending.